For centuries, art in India served a spiritual, functional purpose, carved into temple walls or illuminating the margins of sacred manuscripts. The arrival of British colonial rule in the 18th century replaced these traditions with an entirely different set of visual expectations. English officers required a visual record of their new surroundings, commissioning local artists to paint the tropical plants, wildlife, and customs of the people. They viewed the world through a lens of strict observation, demanding that subjects be documented with clinical precision. To secure this new patronage, Indian painters who had migrated from the fading royal courts of Lucknow and Delhi pivoted their style. In this painting of seated courtesans, we see how artists adapted traditional techniques to satisfy the British demand for literal, physical documentation. This shift required Indian artists to abandon their reliance on memory and ancient aesthetic rulebooks. To succeed in the colonial market, they had to master European anatomical precision and the mechanics of perspective. This hybrid style, known as the company school, successfully established European realism as the definitive standard for good art. It was a movement that effectively colonized the region's visual culture from the inside out. To drive this aesthetic deep into the culture, the British established colonial art schools across the country, where the curriculum centered almost exclusively on academic oil painting. The most successful master of this imported style was a self-taught artist named Raja Ravi Varma. He used Western academic realism to depict scenes from ancient Indian epics. Here, he portrays Krishna as an envoy in the grand court of the Mahabharata. Varma's approach achieved massive commercial success through mass-produced oleographs. These prints brought Indian gods into everyday homes and onto local calendars, though they were rendered as if they had posed in a European studio. As nationalistic sentiment rose at the end of the 19th century, critics began to question this style. They wondered if an Indian myth painted with foreign, Western techniques could ever truly be considered authentic. The debate over style morphed into a political battleground. The canvas was no longer just a surface for paint. It had become a site for a full-scale cultural rebellion against the West. Following the partition of Bengal in 1905, the Swadeshi movement reached its peak. Indian nationalists began boycotting British goods, creating an urgent political need to reclaim a distinct, uncolonized visual identity. This pushback was spearheaded by Indian artist Abanindranath Tagore and British administrator E.B. Havell. Together, they actively worked to dismantle the colonial art school curriculum. Their strategy involved reviving the lost visual languages of Mughal and Pahari miniature traditions. By looking to the past, they aimed to create a style that was Indian in both subject and technique. They also embraced Pan-Asianism, collaborating with visiting Japanese artists to learn alternative techniques like wash painting. This was a deliberate effort to unite with other Eastern nations against Western imperialism. The resulting aesthetic, seen here in the Rasalila, prioritized ethereal, mythic qualities over rigid anatomical reality. It used fluid lines and flat color to evoke a sense of spiritual truth rather than physical documentation. This era of the Bengal school proved that Indian artists could successfully weaponize style, using indigenous techniques to reject European cultural dominance. The nationalist vision eventually pushed beyond the elite circles of Calcutta, finding a new philosophical home at Kala Bhavana in Shantiniketan, India's first national art school. Nandalal Bose, a student of Tagore, headed the painting department there. He dedicated himself to stripping away the elitism of the art world by integrating local village folk art forms into modern artistic training. Mahatma Gandhi eventually commissioned Bose to create visual panels for the 1938 Haripura Congress. Gandhi wanted a visual language that could communicate the Swadeshi vision directly to the masses. In his Tiller of the Soil panel, Bose utilized a bold, flat tempera style reminiscent of village scroll painters. He depicted ordinary rural laborers as the true heroes and the moral center of the nation. This was a massive populist campaign. Bose and his students produced over 400 posters, including this depiction of a drummer, to physically surround the thousands of people at the political gathering. By abandoning Western realism for simple, powerful folk styles, these artists successfully rebranded the marginalized rural worker as the face of an independent India. Just as the nationalist style was solidifying, the major historical plot twist arrived. A groundbreaking 1922 exhibition in Calcutta exposed Indian artists to the works of the Bauhaus school and the European avant-garde. This radical modern art offered a sudden visual shock, shattering traditional reality into abstract geometry and cubist patterns. It was a language of circles, lines, and color patches that felt entirely new. Ironically, this modern European art deeply appealed to the Indian nationalists. They recognized that the Bauhaus artists were also rejecting the very same academic realism that the British had imposed on India. This encounter fractured the binary debate between East and West. Being a modern Indian artist today no longer required a strict, rigid choice between the ancient past and foreign influence. Amrita Sher-Gill became the perfect embodiment of this new synthesis. She traveled between international techniques and indigenous subjects, refusing to be confined by either. In her painting Camels, she applied the bold color fields of European modernism to capture the unromanticized reality of Indian life in a vibrant landscape. Modern Indian art emerged from a constant, dynamic collision between foreign influence and a fierce demand for an indigenous legacy. This ongoing tension remains the true heart of India's visual identity.